Emily, a 6-year-old with a radiant smile despite her frail body, had always been fascinated by the Royal Guards. From her hospital bed, she'd watch videos of their disciplined marches, their stoic faces, and their gleaming uniforms. To her, they were superheroes, standing tall to protect something sacred. When the hospital's wish-granting team asked Emily what her biggest dream was, she didn't hesitate. "I want to meet a Royal Guard." Her parents, heartbroken yet determined to make every moment count, worked with the charity to arrange a visit to the palace. Emily's condition was fragile, but her spirit was unbreakable. Clutching a small drawing she'd made of a guard in his red tunic, she whispered to her mum, "I want to be brave like them." On a crisp morning, Emily and her family arrived at the palace. The crowd buzzed with excitement, tourists snapping photos of the stone-faced royal guards. Emily, in a wheelchair, wore a bright red coat to match the guards' uniforms, her eyes wide with wonder. Her parents stood close, their hearts heavy but lifted by her joy. Guard Harrison, a young but seasoned member of the regiment, stood at his post. Trained to remain motionless and impassive, he'd seen countless faces in the crowd. Tourists, locals, children. But something about Emily caught his eye. Perhaps it was her tiny frame, or the way she clutched her drawing with such pride. Or maybe it was the quiet strength in her gaze, a courage that belied her illness. As Emily's family approached the barrier, a charity volunteer explained her story to an officer nearby. Word reached Harrison through a subtle whisper from his superior, "The girl in the red coat. She's terminally ill. This is her wish." Harrison's heart stirred, though his face remained a mask of discipline. Emily waved her drawing, hoping to catch the guard's attention. To her delight, Harrison's eyes flicked toward her for the briefest moment. It was enough. She beamed, whispering to her dad, "He saw me!" The crowd, unaware of the exchange, continued their chatter, but for Emily, it was as if the world had paused. Harrison's training screamed at him to stay still, to uphold the centuries-old tradition of the Royal Guard. Protocol was sacred, deviation was unthinkable. Yet, as he stood there, the weight of Emily's courage pressed against his resolve. He thought of his own younger sister, of the fragility of life, of what it meant to truly serve. In a moment that felt both reckless and right, Harrison made a choice. He stepped forward, breaking formation, and knelt before Emily. The crowd gasped, phones raised to capture the unprecedented scene. Harrison unclipped a medal from his uniform, a small, polished emblem of his service, and placed it gently in Emily's trembling hands. "This is for your bravery," he said softly. Emily's eyes sparkled with tears as she clutched the medal. She looked up at Harrison, her hero, and raised her tiny hand in a salute. Harrison, his own eyes glistening, returned the gesture. For a moment, they were not a guard and a child, they were two souls recognizing each other's strength. The crowd erupted in applause, many wiping away tears. Emily's parents sobbed, overwhelmed by the kindness of a stranger who had given their daughter a memory to cherish. The officer nearby, though initially stunned, nodded subtly, understanding the deeper duty Harrison had fulfilled. As Harrison returned to his post, the weight of his actions settled in. He knew there might be consequences, a reprimand perhaps, for breaking protocol. But as he glanced at Emily, now laughing and showing her medal to her family, he felt no regret. He had guarded more than a palace that day. He had guarded a little girl's hope, her belief in heroes, her moment of joy. Emily's family later wrote to the regiment, thanking Harrison for his compassion. The story spread, not as a tale of broken rules, but as a testament to humanity's power to shine through even the strictest traditions. Emily carried the medal with her, a symbol of courage, until her final days. As Guard Harrison returned to his post, the air around the palace seemed to hum with a new energy. The crowd's applause faded, but their whispers carried the weight of what they'd witnessed. A royal guard, bound by centuries of tradition, had stepped beyond protocol to honor a little girl's courage. Harrison's polished boots clicked against the stone, his posture resuming its rigid perfection. But inside, his heart raced. He knew the gravity of his choice. Breaking formation, speaking, giving away a medal. Each action was a breach of the strict code that defined his role. A reprimand was likely, perhaps even a formal mark on his record. Yet, as he stole a glance at Emily, now cradling the medal and laughing with her parents, a quiet certainty settled within him. He had no regrets. Emily's face was alight with joy, her small fingers tracing the medal's edges as she showed it to her father. "You said it's for my bravery," she said, her voice weak but brimming with pride. Her mother knelt beside her wheelchair, tears streaming down her face, and hugged her tightly. The charity volunteer who had coordinated the visit snapped a photo of Emily holding the medal, her red coat a bright spot against the grey palace walls. The crowd, still buzzing, began to disperse, but many lingered, sharing videos and photos of the moment on their phones, unaware that this small act would soon ripple far beyond the palace gates. Harrison's superior, Captain Reynolds, stood nearby, his face unreadable. Protocol demanded absolute discipline, and Harrison's actions had disrupted the morning's routine. Yet, as Reynolds watched Emily's family embrace, he gave Harrison a subtle nod, a silent acknowledgement that some rules, in rare moments, could bend for a greater good. "We'll discuss this later," Reynolds said under his breath, his tone stern but not unkind. Harrison nodded, accepting whatever consequences might come. In the days that followed, Emily's family sent a letter to the regiment, addressed to the Kind Guard. They described how Emily clutched the medal during her hospital visits, how she told every nurse and doctor about the hero who saluted her. "You gave our daughter a memory that shines brighter than her pain," the letter read. "You didn't just guard a palace, you guarded her heart." The letter was read aloud in the guards' quarters, and even the most stoic among them felt a lump in their throats. The story spread, first through whispers among the regiment, then through social media as visitors shared their videos. News outlets picked up the tale, framing it not as a breach of protocol, but as a testament to the humanity beneath the uniform. Harrison, ever humble, shied away from the attention, insisting he'd only done what felt right. But to Emily, he was more than a guard. He was a guardian of hope, a living proof that heroes existed. Emily carried the medal with her through her final weeks, a talisman of courage. When she passed, her parents placed it in her small hands, a symbol of the day she felt invincible. Harrison, though he never learned her full story, felt her impact in the quiet moments of his duties, a reminder that service extended beyond the palace walls. It reached into the hearts of those who needed it most. Months had passed since Guard Harrison knelt before Emily, and the palace had returned to its rhythm of disciplined marches and tourist crowds. Yet, the story of the guard and the little girl lingered, woven into the fabric of the regiment's quiet pride. Harrison, now back to his routine duties, carried the memory of Emily like a silent medal of his own. The formal reprimand he'd received, a written warning for breaking protocol, had been softened by Captain Reynolds' private words. "You did what many of us wish we could. Just don't make it a habit." Harrison nodded, grateful, but the experience had changed him. He stood a little taller, not out of pride, but with a deeper sense of purpose. Unbeknownst to Harrison, Emily's story had sparked a quiet movement. Her parents, inspired by the kindness shown to their daughter, founded a small charity called Emily's Light, dedicated to granting wishes for terminally ill children. The charity's first event was a fundraiser at a local community hall, where Emily's drawing of a royal guard, now framed alongside a photo of her holding Harrison's medal, was displayed as a symbol of hope. The event drew unexpected attention, including a surprise visitor, Sarah, a young journalist who had been in the crowd that day at the palace. Sarah, a junior reporter for a local paper, had captured the moment between Harrison and Emily on her phone. Her shaky video, posted on X, had gone viral, amassing millions of views and comments like, "This is what humanity looks like, and rules are nothing compared to this." Moved by the fundraiser's mission, Sarah wrote a feature article, tracing the story from that fleeting moment to its lasting impact. She interviewed Emily's parents, who spoke of their daughter's joy, and tracked down Captain Reynolds, who cautiously praised Harrison's exceptional judgment under unique circumstances. The article caught the eye of a national television network, which invited Harrison to share his story. Reluctant at first, he agreed only after Emily's parents reached out, asking him to help shine a light on their charity. On the broadcast, Harrison sat in his civilian clothes, his voice steady but humble. "I didn't plan to break protocol," he said, "but when I saw Emily, I saw someone braver than I'll ever be. She deserved more than a statue. She deserved to feel like a hero." The interview resonated deeply, inspiring donations to Emily's Light and prompting other organizations to partner with the charity. But the most unexpected ripple came from within the regiment itself. A young recruit, Private Lila of Harrison's, story during training, inspired by his courage to act from the heart. During a ceremonial event at the palace, she proposed a new initiative, a day of kindness, where guards could interact with visitors, especially children, in small, approved ways, a wave, a smile, or a quick photo. The idea, initially met with skepticism, gained traction when Harrison volunteered to lead it, ensuring it respected tradition while honoring Emily's legacy. On the first day of kindness, the palace courtyard buzzed with laughter. Children ran up to the guards, who, within the bounds of their new guidelines, offered nods or gentle waves. One little boy, clutching a toy soldier, approached Harrison and saluted him, just as Emily had. Harrison knelt, not breaking protocol this time but following the new tradition, and returned the story. The boy's mother, wiping tears, whispered, "You're the guard from the story, aren't you?" Harrison smiled softly. "No, Mom. I'm just a guard who learned from a little girl." As the day ended, Harrison stood at his post, the setting sun casting a warm glow over the palace. He thought of Emily, of her drawing, of the medal now resting with her. He didn't know that across the city, Emily's light had just granted its first wish, a trip to the seaside for a boy with leukemia, or that Sarah's article had inspired a documentary about small acts of compassion, but he felt in some quiet way that Emily's courage was still out there, rippling through the world, guarding hope wherever it was needed. The first day of kindness at the palace had been a quiet triumph, a delicate balance of tradition and humanity that left the regiment buzzing with a new sense of purpose. Guard Harrison, now a reluctant symbol of compassion within the ranks, felt the weight of Emily's legacy in every smile he shared with a visiting child. But, as winter settled over the city, bringing grey skies and biting winds, Harrison faced a personal challenge that would test the lessons Emily had unknowingly taught him. Emily's Light, the charity founded by her parents, had grown steadily, granting wishes to children across the country. Its latest project was a courage wall at a local children's hospital, where young patients could pin drawings, letters, or tokens of their bravery. The centerpiece was Emily's framed drawing of a royal guard, now a beacon for others facing their own battles. Harrison had been invited to the wall's unveiling, not as a guest of honor, but as a quiet supporter, at the insistence of Emily's mother, Clara. "You were part of her light," Clara wrote in her invitation. "Please help us share it." Harrison arrived at the hospital on a frosty morning, his breath visible in the air. He wore his civilian coat, feeling out of place without the familiar weight of his uniform. The hospital's halls were bright with murals, but the weight of illness hung heavy. Clara greeted him with a warm hug, her eyes tired but kind. "Emily would have loved this," she said, gesturing to the courage wall, where children's colorful notes and drawings fluttered like a patchwork of hope. As the ceremony began, a young girl named Mia, bald from chemotherapy and clutching a stuffed bear, approached the wall. Her wish, granted by Emily's Light, had been to meet a ballerina, and now she wanted to pin a drawing of a dancer beside Emily's guard. But Mia hesitated, her small frame trembling as she looked up at the crowd. Harrison, standing at the back, recognized that flicker of fear and courage in her eyes. It was the same look he'd seen in Emily. Without thinking, he stepped forward, kneeling beside Mia as he had with Emily. "You're braver than any guard I know," he whispered, echoing the words he'd once told another little girl. "Want to pin it together?" Mia nodded, her shy smile breaking through. With Harrison's steady hand guiding hers, she pinned her drawing to the wall, the crowd clapping softly. Clara, watching from the side, wiped away a tear, seeing Emily's spirit in the moment. The unveiling stirred something in Harrison. He'd always seen his role as a guard as one of quiet service, standing firm, protecting tradition. But Emily, and now Mia, had shown him that service could be personal, vulnerable, and profoundly human. That night, he wrote a letter to Captain Reynolds, proposing an expansion of the Day of Kindness to include hospital visits by guards, in uniform, to inspire young patients. "It's not about breaking protocol," he wrote. "It's about extending our duty to those who need it most." Reynolds, initially wary of further deviations, was swayed by the growing public support for Emily's story and the regiment's evolving image. He approved a pilot program, and Harrison alongside. Private Lila and a few others began visiting children's wards. They brought small tokens, replica medals, postcards of the palace, and shared stories of courage, both their own and the children's. The visits became a lifeline for families, a reminder that heroes weren't just in storybooks or palaces, they were real, and they cared. One evening, after a hospital visit, Harrison stopped by the courage wall alone. The hospital was quiet, the lights dim. He stood before Emily's drawing, its crayon lines faded but vibrant in memory. Beside it, Mia's dancer twirled, joined by dozens of other children's tokens, a star, a heart, a tiny paper crown. Harrison touched the edge of Emily's frame, his voice barely a whisper. "You're still guarding us, aren't you?" Outside, snow began to fall, blanketing the city in silence. Emily's light had grown beyond what anyone could have imagined, its name now synonymous with hope in hospital wards and community centers. Harrison, though still a guard at heart, had become something more, a bridge between duty and compassion, a keeper of the light Emily had sparked. And as he walked into the night, he knew that light would endure, carried by every child who pinned their courage to the wall and every heart that chose kindness over convention. The courage wall had become a sanctuary, not just for the children who pinned their dreams to its surface, but for Harrison, who found himself returning to it whenever doubt or weariness crept in. A year had passed since Emily's moment at the palace, and the world had shifted in ways Harrison could never have foreseen. Emily's light had grown into a national beacon, funding wishes for hundreds of children and inspiring similar initiatives abroad. The regiment's hospital visits, now a cherished tradition, had earned the guards a new nickname among the children, the Brave Ones. Yet, for Harrison, the heart of it all remained a simple crayon drawing of a guard, pinned to a hospital wall. It was late spring and the city bloomed with color. Harrison, now a corporal after a quiet promotion, was preparing for a special event, the first anniversary celebration of Emily's Light. The charity had planned a gathering at the palace grounds, a rare collaboration with the regiment where children and families could meet guards, share stories, and add to a portable courage wall set up for the occasion. Clara and her husband Tom had invited Harrison to speak, not as a hero, but as the guard who had started it all. He'd spent nights drafting his words, nervous about standing before a crowd without the shield of his uniform's stoicism. The day arrived, warm and golden, with children's laughter echoing across the palace lawn. Guards in their red tunics stood at ease, some bending to high-five kids or admire their drawings. The portable courage wall, a tapestry of paper, stars, hearts, and sketches, shimmered in the sunlight. Harrison, in his ceremonial uniform, felt a knot in his chest as he watched a young boy named Leo, a leukemia survivor whose wish had been to ride in a fire truck, pin a star to the wall. Leo's grin reminded Harrison of Emily, and for a moment he felt her presence as vividly as if she stood beside him. Clara took the stage, a small platform draped in flowers, and spoke of Emily's courage, her love for the guards, and the ripple of kindness that had touched thousands. She introduced Harrison, her voice breaking as she said, "This man didn't just give my daughter a medal, he gave her a moment that carried us through our darkest days." The crowd applauded, and Harrison stepped forward, his polished boots gleaming but his hands trembling slightly. "I'm no speaker," he began, his voice steadying as he found Leo's face in the crowd. "I'm a god. My job is to stand, to serve, to protect. But a little girl named Emily taught me that protecting isn't just about palaces or traditions, it's about hearts. She was braver than any of us, and she showed me that a single moment of kindness can outshine a lifetime of duty." He paused, glancing at the courage wall. Every star on that wall, every drawing is a reminder of her, and it's a reminder that we all have a choice, to stand still or to step forward. And the crowd was silent, then erupted in cheers. Leo ran up, tugging at Harrison's sleeve to show him his star, which bore the words, "Brave like Emily." Harrison knelt, as he always did, and pinned a small replica guard's badge next to Leo's star. "You're one of us now," he said, and Leo's eyes widened with pride. As the event wound down, Clara handed Harrison a letter, sealed with a tiny star sticker. "It's from us," she said softly. "For when you're alone." That night, in the quiet of his quarters, Harrison opened it. Inside was a note from Clara and Tom, thanking him for keeping Emily's light alive. Tucked within was a new drawing, a child's rendition of a guard and a girl saluting under a sky full of stars. At the bottom, in Clara's handwriting, were the words, "Emily's watching, and she's proud." Harrison pinned the drawing above his desk, beside a faded photo of the palace crowd from that day a year ago. Outside, the city hummed, and somewhere, a child pinned another star to a hospital wall. Emily's light had become a constellation, each act of courage a point of brightness in the dark, and Harrison, still a guard at heart, knew his duty now extended far beyond the palace, to guard the stars, to honor the brave, and to carry Emily's lesson into every moment he was given.